The rain had stopped an hour ago, but Maya still sat on the cold park bench, her clothes damp and her heart even damper. The streetlight above flickered occasionally, casting strange shadows on the empty playground in front of her. It was past midnight, and the world felt as lonely as she did. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from her sister asking if she was okay. Maya turned the phone face down on the bench. She wasn't okay. She hadn't been okay for a long time, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the final straw. "You're just too intense, Maya," Ryan had said earlier that evening, his voice cold and distant. They'd been together for 8 months. 8 months of her trying to be the perfect girlfriend, cooking his favorite meals, remembering every important date, supporting his dreams of becoming a musician even when he never supported hers. "I need someone more, I don't know, more fun, less complicated," he'd continued, not even having the decency to look at her while he packed his things from her apartment. "Maybe you should work on yourself before trying to be in a relationship." Those words hit her like a physical blow. Work on yourself. As if she hadn't been working on herself her entire adult life. As if she hadn't spent thousands of dollars on therapy, self-help books, and trying to become whatever version of herself might finally be lovable. At 31, Maya felt like she'd collected rejections the way other people collected stamps. There was David in college who left her for her roommate. Then Kevin, who said she was too clingy when all she'd done was text him good morning. After that came Brian, who disappeared entirely after 3 months, only to post pictures with another woman a week later. The pattern was always the same. They'd seem interested at first, charmed by her enthusiasm for books, her passion for teaching, children at the local community center, her genuine interest in their lives. But then something would shift. They'd grow distant, critical, unavailable. The excuses varied, but the message was always clear. She wasn't enough. Or maybe she was too much. Either way, she was wrong. Maya pulled her knees to her chest and let the tears flow freely. There was no one around to see her anyway. The park was empty except for a few late-night joggers who passed by without noticing her. She felt invisible, which seemed fitting. Sometimes she wondered if she actually existed at all, or if she was just a background character in everyone else's story. Her mind wandered to her co-workers at the school where she taught 5th grade. They were always talking about their boyfriends, their husbands, their weekend plans with significant others. Maya usually stayed quiet during these conversations, offering smiles and nods while feeling like an outsider looking in at a life she'd never have. "Maybe there's something wrong with me," she whispered to the empty air. The words tasted bitter in her mouth, but they felt true. How else could she explain 31 years of romantic failure? How else could she make sense of the fact that every man she'd ever loved had eventually decided she wasn't worth staying for? The worst part wasn't even the breakups themselves. It was the hope that came before each one. That stupid, stubborn hope that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this man would see something in her worth keeping. Maybe this time, she wouldn't have to pretend to be someone else to keep his interest. But hope was exhausting. Tonight, sitting alone in the dark park, Maya felt that hope finally dying. Maybe it was better this way. Maybe she could stop trying so hard. Stop believing in fairy tales, stop setting herself up for disappointment. She thought about her parents who'd been married for 35 years. They made it look so easy, the way they finished each other's sentences and laughed at each other's jokes. Her mother often asked when Maya was going to settle down, as if settling down was something Maya was choosing not to do, like it was a switch she could flip whenever she wanted. "I just don't understand it," her mother had said during their last phone call. "You're such a sweet girl, Maya. You're smart and pretty and kind. Why haven't you found someone yet?" The question haunted her because she'd been asking herself the same thing for years. What was it about her that made men run? Was she too eager? Not eager enough? Too independent? Too needy? She'd tried being everything and nothing, and it never worked. Her sister Priya had found her husband in college, and they'd been together ever since. They had 2 kids now, and a house in the suburbs with a white picket fence. Priya meant well, but her advice always sounded hollow to Maya. "You just haven't met the right person yet," she'd say. "When you know, you know." But Maya was tired of waiting for someone who might not exist. She was tired of going to weddings alone, tired of making excuses for why she didn't have a +1, tired of well-meaning friends trying to set her up with their cousins or coworkers who inevitably turned out to be just as unavailable as the rest. A sound broke through her thoughts, footsteps on the gravel path, slow and steady. Maya quickly wiped her eyes and tried to compose herself. The last thing she wanted was some stranger seeing her fall apart in public. The footsteps stopped nearby, and she heard a gentle voice say, "Excuse me, are you all right?" Maya looked up to see a man standing a respectful distance away, holding 2 paper cups that steamed in the cool air. He was tall with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing a simple jacket and jeans. There was something calm about his presence, something that didn't set off her usual alarm bells about strange men approaching her in the dark. "I'm fine," she lied automatically, her voice hoarse from crying. He tilted his head slightly, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You don't look fine. And before you tell me it's none of my business, you're right. But I was getting coffee from the diner across the street, and I noticed you sitting here. You've been here for over an hour." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. Had she really been that obvious? "You were watching me?" Not watching exactly. More like aware. "I work nights sometimes, and I've walked past this park a few times tonight. You caught my attention because you looked like someone carrying a heavy weight." There was something in his voice that made her believe him. No judgment, no agenda, just simple human concern. It had been so long since someone had spoken to her with such genuine kindness that she almost started crying again. "I got you coffee," he said, holding up one of the cups. "Black? Because I didn't know how you like it. But if you don't want it from a stranger, I completely understand." Maya studied his face in the streetlight. He looked to be in his late 30s, with lines around his eyes that suggested he'd done his share of smiling and maybe some crying too. There was something familiar about his expression, like he'd sat on his own park bench at midnight wrestling with his own demons. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why are you being nice to me? You don't know me. I could be crazy." He laughed softly, and the sound was warm and genuine. "We're all a little crazy, and honestly, you looked like someone who could use a friend right now. Sometimes that's all it takes." Against her better judgment, Maya accepted the coffee. It was perfect, actually. Strong and hot and exactly what she needed. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the stranger settling on the opposite end of the bench, giving her space but offering his presence. Finally, Maya found herself talking. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the way he listened without trying to fix anything, but the words just poured out. She told him about Ryan, about the pattern of failed relationships, about feeling like she was fundamentally unlovable. "No man has ever really wanted me," she said finally, her voice breaking on the words. "Not really. They all leave eventually. They all find someone better, someone easier, someone more. I don't even know what. But not me. Never me." The stranger was quiet for a long moment, considering her words. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but certain. "Then I'll stay until you believe in love." Maya stared at him, sure she'd misheard. "What? I'll stay," he repeated. "Not forever, not in some creepy stalker way. But I'll stay until you believe that love is real, that you're worthy of it, that the right person exists for you." "That's insane," Maya whispered. "You don't even know me." "No, I don't. But I know what it's like to feel invisible. I know what it's like to wonder if you're broken in some fundamental way. And I know that sometimes all it takes is one person who sees you, really sees you, to change everything." They sat together. As the night grew later and the park grew quieter, the stranger, who eventually introduced himself as Alex, didn't try to solve her problems or offer easy answers. He didn't tell her that everything happened for a reason, or that she just needed to love herself first. He simply listened, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, Maya felt heard. When she finally stood to leave, her legs stiff from sitting so long, Alex stood too. "Will you be here tomorrow night?" she asked, surprising herself with a question. "If you want me to be," he said. Maya nodded, not trusting her voice. As she walked home through the empty streets, she found herself thinking about what Alex had said. The idea that someone, a stranger no less, would promise to stay until she believed in love seemed impossible, but something in his eyes had told her he meant it. For the first time in months, Maya went to sleep with something that felt dangerously close to hope stirring in her chest. Maybe she was wrong about being unlovable. Maybe she just hadn't me. Maya spent the entire next day thinking about whether she should go back to the park. Part of her was convinced that Alex wouldn't show up, that his promise had been nothing more than the kind words of a stranger trying to make her feel better, in a moment of crisis. But another part of her, a small voice she'd almost forgotten existed, whispered that maybe he'd meant what he said. At 11:30 that night, she found herself walking toward the park again. Her heart raced as she approached the bench where they'd sat the night before. When she saw a familiar figure already sitting there, 2 coffee cups beside him, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Someone had kept their word to her. "You came," Alex said, looking up with a smile that seemed genuinely pleased rather than surprised. "You stayed," Maya replied, settling onto the bench with a careful distance between them. "I told you I would." They fell into an easy conversation, that night, and the next, and the one after that. What started as late-night meetings in the park gradually expanded into other places and other times. Alex invited her to a small coffee shop he liked, a quiet place with mismatched furniture and books lining the walls. The owner, an elderly woman named Rose, seemed to know Alex well and welcomed Maya with the kind of warmth that made her feel instantly at home. "Alex has been coming here for 2 years," Rose told Maya one afternoon while Alex was in the bathroom. "Ever since his wife died. He was so sad for so long, but lately he's been different, lighter. I think that might be because of you." Maya's heart stopped. Wife? Alex had never mentioned being married, let alone being widowed. When he returned to their table, she struggled to process this new information. How had she been so focused on her own pain that she'd missed his? That evening, as they walked through the quiet neighborhood near the coffee shop, Maya finally asked, "About it? Rose mentioned that you lost your wife." Alex was quiet for several steps before nodding. 2 years ago, cancer. We were together for 12 years, married for 8 of them. "I'm so sorry," Maya said, feeling inadequate. "I had no idea. It's not something I usually bring up in casual conversation," Alex said with a sad smile. "Elena she was everything to me. When she died, I thought that was it for me. I thought I'd used up my quota of love for one lifetime." They stopped walking and sat on a low stone wall outside a closed flower shop. Maya waited for him to continue, sensing there was more he needed to say. "The first year was the worst," Alex said, staring at his hands. "I couldn't function, couldn't work, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Everyone kept telling me I needed to move on, as if grief was something you could just decide to stop doing. Elena's sister finally convinced me to start volunteering at the literacy center where Elena used to work. She said Elena would have wanted me to keep helping people." "Is that what you were doing that first night? Coming from volunteer work?" Alex nodded. "I'd been there late, helping a man named Robert learn to read so he could write letters to his grandchildren. When I left, I was feeling, I don't know, hopeful maybe, like Elena was still with me somehow when I was doing the work she loved. But then I saw you on that bench and you looked exactly how I felt most days, lost and alone and wondering if love was just a cruel joke." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "So you decided to help me the way the literacy center helped you?" "Not exactly. I think maybe we helped each other." Over the following weeks, Maya began to see Alex's world through his eyes. He took her to the literacy center, where she met Robert, who was now writing beautiful letters to his 8-year-old granddaughter. She met Carmen, a young mother learning to read so she could help her children with their homework. She met dozens of adults who had somehow missed learning to read as children and were now brave enough to try as grown-ups. Elena started this program, Alex told her as they watched Carmen sound out words in a beginner's book. She believed that it's never too late to learn, never too late to change your life. Maya found herself volunteering there too, helping with administrative work and eventually reading with some of the students. She discovered that she had a talent for making people feel comfortable with their learning process, never judging their struggles or making them feel ashamed of what they didn't know. "You're good at this," Alex told her one evening as they walked home from the center. "Elena would have liked you." The comment stayed with Maya for days. She found herself wondering about Elena, about what kind of woman could inspire such devotion and create such meaningful work. One afternoon, Alex showed her pictures on his phone. Elena laughing at a beach, Elena in a hospital bed still smiling despite the tubes and wires, Elena and Alex at their wedding, looking at each other like they held the secrets of the universe. She was beautiful, Maya said, and meant it. She was, Alex agreed. But more than that, she was kind. Really, genuinely kind. She saw the best in everyone, including me on the days when I couldn't see it in myself. Maya began to understand that Alex's promise to stay until she believed in love wasn't romantic pursuit. It was something deeper than that. He was sharing with her what Elena had given him, the experience of being seen, valued, and supported without conditions. Their friendship deepened in unexpected ways. Alex encouraged Maya to pursue things she'd given up on, like the creative writing class she'd stopped attending because an ex-boyfriend had called her stories boring. He listened to her read her work aloud and gave thoughtful feedback that made her writing stronger. "Why did you stop doing this?" he asked after she'd read him a story about a teacher who discovers one of her students is living in a car with his family. Ryan said it was a waste of time. He said I should focus on more practical things. Alex was quiet for a moment. "Elena always said that the things that feed your soul are never a waste of time. Your writing is beautiful, Maya. It matters." Maya felt something shift inside her chest. When was the last time someone had told her that her dreams mattered? When was the last time someone had encouraged her to take up space in the world rather than trying to make herself smaller? She also began to learn about Alex beyond his grief. He was a software developer who worked remotely, which explained his flexible schedule. He loved old movies and terrible puns and had an inexplicable fear of butterflies that made Maya laugh until her sides hurt. He cooked elaborate meals for one and always made too much food, a habit left over from cooking for Elena. "You should come for dinner sometime," he said one evening. "I mean, if you want to. I make enough pasta to feed a small army." Maya's first instinct was to read romantic intention into the invitation, but she was learning to trust Alex's straightforward nature. When he said dinner, he meant dinner. When he said friendship, he meant friendship. It was refreshing after years of trying to decode hidden meanings and mixed signals. His apartment was exactly what she'd expected. Clean, comfortable, and filled with evidence of a life shared with someone else. Photos of Elena were everywhere, but they didn't make Maya feel like an intruder. Instead, they made her feel like she was being welcomed into a story that was bigger than just Alex's grief. "She would have liked you," Alex said again as they ate homemade lasagna and talked about their favorite books. "She always said I needed more friends who challenged me to be better. Is that what I do? Every day. You make me want to be the kind of person who deserves Elena's love, even though she's gone. And you make me want to be the kind of friend who actually helps, not just someone who says the right things." Maya realized that night that she was experiencing something she'd never had before, a friendship with a man that wasn't complicated by romantic expectations or hidden agendas. Alex liked her exactly as she was, supported her dreams, and never tried to change her or fix her. He simply showed up, day after day, proving that consistency and care were possible. For the first time in her adult life, Maya began to understand what healthy love might look like. It wasn't the desperate need she'd felt with previous boyfriends, that consuming desire to be chosen and kept. It wasn't the constant anxiety about saying the wrong thing or being too much or not enough. Instead, it was quiet and steady. It was someone remembering that she liked extra foam in her coffee and bringing her books he thought she'd enjoy. It was having someone to call when her day was difficult and knowing they'd listen without trying to solve everything. It was being seen and accepted and supported, not despite her flaws but including them. Late one night, as they sat in the park where they'd first met, Maya realized she was healing in ways she hadn't thought possible. The sharp edge of her loneliness had softened. The voice in her head that constantly criticized her had grown quieter. For the first time in years, she was beginning to like the woman she saw in the mirror. "Thank you," she told Alex suddenly. "For what?" "For staying. For showing me what it feels like to be someone's friend instead of someone's project." Alex smiled, that same gentle smile he'd given her that first night. "Thank you for letting me stay. Elena always said the best way to heal is to help someone else heal." I think she was right. Maya looked up at the stars, feeling something she was afraid to name stirring in her chest. It wasn't hope exactly, but it wasn't despair either. It was possibility. The possibility that she was worthy of love that genuine. 4 months into their friendship, Maya started noticing changes in herself that went beyond just feeling less lonely. She laughed more, smiled at strangers, and stopped apologizing for taking up space in conversations. Her students at school began commenting on how different she seemed, more confident and engaged. Her sister Priya noticed it too during their weekly phone calls. "You sound happy," Priya said one Sunday morning. "Actually happy, not just pretending to be okay." "I think I am happy," Maya realized, surprised by the truth of it. "I have a friend who really sees me." "A friend?" "Yes, a friend. His name is Alex, and before you get that tone in your voice, it's not like that. He's helping me understand what healthy relationships look like." But even as she said the words, Maya knew something was shifting. She found herself looking forward to seeing Alex with an intensity that went beyond friendship. She caught herself studying his face when he wasn't looking, memorizing the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, or how gentle his hands were when he helped students at the literacy center. The change in her feelings scared her. Alex had been clear from the beginning that he was still processing his grief, still learning how to live without Elena. The last thing Maya wanted was to complicate their friendship by developing romantic feelings, especially when that friendship had been the source of her healing. But she couldn't deny what was happening in her heart. When Alex encouraged her to apply for a master's program in education, something she'd dreamed about for years, she felt a warmth that went beyond gratitude. When he spent an entire Saturday helping her fill out applications and write her personal statement, she found herself imagining what it might be like to build a life with someone so supportive. "Why did you give up on this before?" Alex asked as they worked on her application essays at his kitchen table, Elena's photo smiling at them from the bookshelf nearby. "My ex-boyfriend David said graduate school was selfish when I could be starting a family instead. Then Kevin said it was a waste of money since teaching doesn't pay well anyway. After a while, I started believing them." Alex looked up from his laptop, his expression serious. "Maya, you know that's not true, right? Your dreams aren't negotiable. They're not something you trade away to make someone else comfortable." "I know that now," she said softly. "You've helped me remember." Elena used to say that when you love someone, you become an advocate for their dreams. You don't try to shrink them or redirect them. You help them grow into the person they're meant to be. Maya felt something twist in her chest at the mention of Elena, but it wasn't jealousy exactly. It was more like recognition that she was falling in love with the kind of man who spoke about his deceased wife with such reverence, who had learned what real love looked like and was generous enough to share those lessons. The test of their friendship came on a Tuesday evening in October. Maya's phone rang during dinner, her mother's voice panicked and shaky on the other end. "Maya, your father's in the hospital. He had chest pains at work. They think it might be his heart." Maya's world tilted. Her father was only 58, healthy and active. The thought of losing him felt impossible and terrifying. Her hands shook as she tried to find her car keys, her mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Without thinking, she called Alex. "I need help," she said when he answered, her voice breaking. "My dad's in the hospital and I can't think straight and I don't know what to do." "I'm on my way," Alex said immediately. "Text me your address. Don't try to drive yourself." He arrived, within 15 minutes, calm and steady in the face of her panic. He drove her to the hospital, his hand occasionally reaching over to squeeze hers when the tears came. In the waiting room, he sat beside her family, quietly supporting them through the long night. Maya watched him bring coffee to her worried mother, engage her teenage nephew in conversation to distract him from his fear, and somehow make her anxious. Father feel less alone when he was finally allowed visitors. Alex didn't try to take over or fix everything. He simply showed up fully, offering his presence as a gift to all of them. "Who is this young man?" her mother whispered to Maya during one of their vigils in the hallway. "He's my friend," Maya said, the words feeling both completely true and completely inadequate. "He loves you," her mother said simply. "I can see it in how he looks at you, how he takes care of all of us because we matter to you." Maya's heart raced at her mother's words. She'd been so focused on protecting herself from unrequited feelings that she hadn't allowed herself to consider whether Alex might be developing feelings too. Her father's condition stabilized after 3 days. It had been a minor heart attack, scary but not life-threatening with proper treatment and lifestyle changes. As Maya's family began to relax and plan for his recovery, she found herself more aware than ever of how Alex had supported them all. On the drive home from the hospital, Maya finally voiced what had been building inside her for weeks. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did for my family." "You don't need to thank me," Alex said, his eyes on the road. "That's what people do when they care about each other." "Is that what this is? Caring about each other?" Alex was quiet. For several blocks, when he finally spoke, his voice was careful, uncertain. "Maya, I need to tell you something, and I'm afraid it might change things between us." Her stomach dropped. Was he going to tell her that he'd met someone else? That their friendship had run its course? That he'd fulfilled his promise to stay? Until she believed in love, and now it was time for him to move on. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "I didn't plan it, and I'm not sure I'm ready for it. But it's happening anyway." Maya felt like she couldn't breathe. "Alex, I know this complicates everything. I know I promised to be your friend, to help you heal without any agenda, and I meant that promise. If you need me to be only your friend, I can do that. But I also can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is only friendship." They sat in her driveway, the car engine ticking as it cooled, both of them afraid to look at each other. "I've been falling in love with you too," Maya whispered. "I've been terrified to admit it because I didn't want to ruin what we have. What we have is the most precious thing in my life." Alex finally turned to face her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "What if we didn't ruin it? What if we just let it grow into something more?" The kiss that followed was gentle and tentative, both of them aware they were crossing a line that would change everything. But it felt right in a way that surprised Maya. There was none of the desperate need she'd felt with other men. No sense that she had to perform or be someone other than herself. It was simply two people who had found something rare and precious together, choosing to see where it might lead. Over the following weeks, they navigated the transition from friendship to something more with the same care and honesty that had characterized their relationship from the beginning. They talked about Elena, about Maya's fears, about what it meant to build something new while honoring what had come before. "I'm not trying to replace Elena," Maya told Alex one evening, as they walked through the neighborhood where they'd had so many conversations. "I could never be her, and I wouldn't want to be. But I love the man you became because of loving her. I love how she taught you to see the best in people, including me." "Elena always said that love isn't finite," Alex replied, his arm around Maya's shoulders. "She said the more love you give away, the more you have. I think she would have liked you, and I think she would have been happy that I found you." Maya felt the last of her walls crumble at his words. For the first time in her life, she was in love with someone who loved her back completely, who saw her flaws and chose her anyway, who supported her dreams and celebrated her successes, and showed up when life got difficult. But more than that, she had learned to love herself. Through Alex's consistent care and Elena's legacy of believing in people's potential, Maya had discovered that she was worthy of love exactly as she was. She didn't need to change or shrink or apologize for her existence. She was enough, just as she was. The woman who had wept on a park bench that she was unlovable had grown into someone who understood her own worth. The stranger who had promised to stay until she believed in love had become the partner who showed her every day what love actually looked like. As they walked hand in hand through the quiet streets, Maya realized that Alex had kept his promise, in ways neither of them had expected. He had stayed not just until she believed in love, but until she became someone capable of giving and receiving it fully. And in the process, they had both discovered that sometimes the best love stories begin with two broken people choosing to heal together. Maya stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, her hands gripping the sink as she tried to calm her racing heart. 3 weeks had passed since she and Alex had kissed, since they'd admitted their feelings for each other, and since their friendship had transformed into something deeper. But instead of feeling happier, Maya found herself spiraling into familiar patterns of fear and self-doubt. What if this was all a mistake? What if Alex was just confused, mixing up his gratitude for their friendship with romantic love? What if she was too broken, too needy, too much for him to handle long-term? The questions circled in her mind like vultures, picking apart every moment of happiness she'd felt in recent weeks. She'd started pulling away, declining his invitations for dinner, making excuses to avoid their usual walks, even skipping their volunteer sessions at the literacy center. Each time Alex texted or called, Maya felt a pang of longing followed immediately by terror. She wanted so desperately to believe that this could work, but her history told a different story. "You're going to ruin this," she whispered to her reflection. "Just like you ruin everything else." The voice in her head sounded suspiciously like Kevin, her ex from 2 years ago, who had told her she was emotionally exhausting and too intense for any normal person to handle. Or maybe it was Brian, who had simply vanished from her life, without explanation, leaving her to assume she'd done something wrong. Maya had been down this road before. She would get close to someone, start to hope, start to believe that maybe this time would be different. And then the fear would set in, that crushing weight of certainty that she would eventually be abandoned. So she would start testing the relationship, pushing boundaries, creating problems where none existed, until finally the other person would get tired of her behavior and leave. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy she'd repeated so many times it felt like muscle memory. But this was Alex. Alex, who had sat with her on the darkest night of her life and promised to stay. Alex, who had spent months showing her what consistent care looked like. Alex, who had supported her family through her father's health scare without being asked. Surely he was different. The rational part of her mind knew this was true, but the scared, hurt part of her, the part that had been rejected and abandoned more times than she could count, was louder and more insistent. It whispered that Alex was just like all the others, that he would eventually see through whatever spell she'd cast on him and realize she wasn't worth the trouble. Her phone buzzed with another text from Alex. "Haven't seen you in a few days. Everything okay? Want to grab coffee later?" Maya typed and deleted several responses, finally settling on, "Sorry, busy with work stuff. Rain check?" It was a lie, and they both knew it. But lying felt safer than admitting that she was sabotaging their relationship because she was terrified of being hurt again. The next evening, Alex showed up at her apartment unannounced. Maya opened the door to find him standing in the hallway, holding a bag of takeout from their favorite Thai restaurant and wearing an expression of gentle concern. "We need to talk," he said simply. Maya's instinct was to slam the door, to hide, to protect herself from whatever conversation was coming. Instead, she stepped aside and let him in, her heart pounding as she prepared for the inevitable rejection. They sat on her couch, the takeout growing cold on the coffee table between them, while Alex studied her face with those kind, perceptive eyes that saw too much. "What's going on, Maya?" he asked softly. "And please don't tell me it's work stuff. I know you better than that." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. Here it was. The moment when she would have to explain her craziness, her inability to accept good things, her tendency to destroy relationships before they could destroy her. How could she make him understand without sounding completely unhinged? "I'm scared," she whispered finally, the words barely audible. "Of what?" "Of this. Of us." of believing that you actually want to be with me only to have you change your mind. When you figure out what I'm really like. Alex was quiet for a long moment, processing her words. When he spoke, his voice was gentle but firm. Maya, what are you really like? Because I've spent 6 months getting to know you. And I've seen you angry and sad and frustrated and happy and passionate about things you care about. I've seen you cry over movies and laugh until you snort and worry about your students and support your family. What part of that do you think I haven't seen yet? The part that's too much, Maya said, the words tumbling out in a rush. The part that needs too much reassurance and asks too many questions and gets clingy when things are good, because I'm waiting for them to go bad. The part that ruins everything because I can't just be normal and trust that someone might actually want to stay with me. To her surprise, Alex smiled, not mockingly, but with recognition and understanding. Oh, he said. That part. Maya felt her cheeks burn with shame. Yeah, that part. Maya, do you want to know what Elena was like when we first started dating? The question caught her off guard. Alex rarely brought up specifics about his relationship with Elena, and never in the context of comparing her to Maya. She was terrified. Alex continued. She'd been in an abusive relationship before me, and she was convinced that I was going to hurt her or leave her or both. She used to pick fights with me over nothing, testing to see if I'd storm out. She'd go silent for days, then call crying and apologizing. She once broke up with me 3 times in 1 week because she was so sure I was going to break up with her that she wanted to do it first. Maya stared at him, trying to process this information. Elena, the perfect woman whose memory she could never compete with, had been scared and difficult and human. What did you do? Maya asked. I stayed. I told her that I understood she was scared, that her fear made sense given what she'd been through, but that I wasn't going anywhere. I showed up every day even when she pushed me away, especially when she pushed me away, and eventually she started to believe that I meant it. Tears were streaming down Maya's face now. But what if I can't get past it? What if I'm too damaged to be in a healthy relationship? Alex moved closer on the couch, his hand reaching for hers. Maya, you're not damaged. You're careful. You're protecting yourself the only way you know how. But you don't have to protect yourself from me. How can you be sure? How can you promise that you won't get tired of dealing with my issues and decide I'm not worth the effort? Because, Alex said, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm, loving someone isn't about finding a person who doesn't have issues. It's about finding someone whose issues you're willing to work through together. Elena and I didn't have a perfect relationship. We had a real one. We fought sometimes. We both had baggage. We both had days when we were difficult to love. But we chose each other anyway, every single day. Maya felt something crack open in her chest, a tiny fissure in the wall she'd built around her heart. I want to believe you, she whispered. I want to believe that this is real, that you're not going to wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. Then believe it, Alex said simply. Not all at once. I know that's too much to ask. But believe it a little bit today, and a little bit more tomorrow. Trust that I know my own mind and I know my own heart. Trust that when I tell you I love you, I mean it. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility and promise. Maya realized that this was the moment of choice that had eluded her in every previous relationship. She could choose fear, could retreat into the familiar safety of expecting abandonment, or she could choose trust, could take the terrifying leap of faith that Alex was different, that this was different. I love you too, she said, the words shaky but true. I'm terrified, but I love you. Alex smiled, that same gentle smile that had first made her feel seen 6 months ago in the park. Being terrified is okay. Being scared doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means it matters. They talked until late that night, working through Maya's fears and Alex's own concerns about building something new while honoring Elena's memory. They talked about the practicalities of merging their lives, about Maya's tendency to overthink and Alex's habit of retreating into himself when emotions got intense. They talked about counseling, about learning better ways to communicate, about what it would mean to choose each other despite their respective baggage. I have a confession, Alex said as they finally prepared to go to bed. Maya to her room, Alex to the guest bed they'd agreed on as they navigated this new phase of their relationship. That first night in the park, when I promised to stay, until you believed in love? I didn't just mean until you believed love existed. I meant until you believed you deserved it. Maya felt fresh tears spring to her eyes. Do you think I believe that now? Alex considered the question seriously. I think you're starting to, and I think that's enough for now. As Maya lay in bed that night, listening to Alex moving around quietly in the next room, she realized that something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in her adult life, she was in a relationship where someone knew about her fears and chose to stay anyway. Someone who didn't try to fix her or change her, but who loved her exactly as she was while supporting her growth. The scared part of her was still there, still whispering warnings about. 2 years after that life-changing night in the park, Maya stood in front of her bedroom mirror adjusting the simple white dress she'd chosen for her wedding day. It wasn't the elaborate gown she'd dreamed about as a little girl. No beading, or train, or dramatic veil. Instead, it was elegant and understated, much like the love story that had brought her to this moment. Through her bedroom window, she could see guests gathering in the same park where she and Alex had first met. They'd decided to have their wedding there, on the exact spot where a broken woman had met a stranger who promised to stay. It felt like the perfect way to honor the journey that had brought them here. Her sister Priya knocked softly on the door before entering, carrying a small bouquet of white roses and baby's breath. Ready? Priya asked, but her eyes were already studying Maya's face with concern. You look nervous. I am nervous, Maya admitted, her hands shaking slightly as she took the bouquet. But not the way I used to be nervous. This is different. It was true. The anxiety she felt today wasn't the familiar terror of wondering if someone would change their mind about her. It wasn't the desperate fear of not being enough or being too much. Instead, it was the sweet nervousness of someone about to make a promise they intended to keep for the rest of their life. The past 2 years hadn't been easy exactly, but they'd been real in a way Maya had never experienced before. She and Alex had gone to couples counseling, learning how to communicate through their individual traumas and insecurities. Maya had worked on her tendency to catastrophize and push away good things, while Alex had learned to be more open about his own needs and fears. There had been difficult conversations about Elena, about the space she would always occupy in Alex's heart, and how Maya could honor that rather than compete with it. Maya had met Elena's parents, who welcomed her with the kind of warmth that made her understand why their daughter had been so special. Elena's mother had even given Maya a small pendant that had belonged to Elena, not as a replacement, but as a symbol of continuation. Elena would have loved you, she'd told Maya. She always said that love multiplies rather than divides. Alex loving you doesn't diminish what he felt for Elena. It just proves that he learned how to love well. Maya had also pursued her master's degree in education with Alex's unwavering support. She was now working on her thesis about literacy, programs for adults inspired by her volunteer work at the center Elena had founded. Alex had been right that first night. Her dreams weren't negotiable, and with the right person, they became shared dreams rather than obstacles. They'd moved in together 6 months ago, a process that involved careful negotiation about space and boundaries, and how to blend their lives respectfully. Alex had kept photos of Elena throughout their home, and Maya had been surprised to discover that their presence comforted rather than threatened her. Elena was part of their story now, part of what had shaped the man Maya loved. The literacy center had become a central part of their life together. Maya now coordinated the women's program while Alex managed the technical aspects and fundraising. They'd helped over 200 adults learn to read in the past year, and each graduation ceremony felt like a celebration of human resilience and the power of believing in people's potential. Maya, Priya said gently, breaking into her thoughts. Are you sure you're okay? You seem far away. I'm just thinking about how different everything is from what I expected, Maya said, touching the pendant Elena's mother had given her. 2 years ago, I thought love meant someone choosing me despite my flaws. Now I understand it means someone choosing me because of who I am, flaws included. Through the window, she could see Alex standing near the makeshift altar they'd set up under the old oak tree. He was wearing a simple dark suit and talking to her father, who had made a full recovery from his heart attack and had become one of Alex's biggest supporters. Her mother was arranging flowers on the chairs they'd borrowed from the community center, her face bright with the joy Maya had never thought she'd see there. The guest list was small: family, a few close friends, and several people from the literacy center who had become like family to both of them. Robert, the man Alex had been helping that first night, was there with his granddaughter, now 10 years old and an avid reader thanks to her grandfather's newfound skills. Carmen had brought her 3 children, all of whom were excelling in school, with their mother's support. "I need to tell you something," Maya said suddenly, turning to face her sister. "I know I used to complain that you and Mom were always asking when I'd settle down, when I'd find someone. And I know I acted like marriage was just something that happened to other people, not something I really wanted." Priya nodded, her expression soft with understanding. "But I want this," Maya continued, her voice strong and certain. "Not because I think I need someone to complete me, and not because I'm afraid of being alone. I want to marry Alex because he's shown me what partnership actually looks like. He's shown me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who's willing to grow alongside you." "That's the most beautiful thing you've ever said," Priya whispered, tears starting to fall. They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Maya's father peered in, looking handsome in his navy suit and slightly overwhelmed by emotion. "Time to go, sweetheart," he said, offering Maya his arm. "Though I have to say I'm not sure who's luckier, you or Alex." As they walked toward the park, Maya reflected on the ceremony she and Alex had planned together. They'd written their own vows, of course, but Maya had also asked if she could say something about the night they met. She wanted their guests to understand that this wasn't just a wedding. It was the culmination of a promise kept and a life rebuilt. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. Alex's eyes filled with tears when he saw Maya walking toward him, and she felt that familiar flutter of being truly seen by someone who loved her completely. They stood under the tree where they'd had so many important conversations, surrounded by the people who mattered most to them. When it came time for vows, Alex spoke first, his voice steady but emotional. "Maya, 2 years ago, I made you a promise, in this very spot. I said I would stay until you believed in love. What I didn't know then was that you would teach me how to love again, not as a replacement for what I'd lost, but as something new and beautiful that honored both where I'd been and where I was going. You've shown me that hearts don't have limited capacity, that love grows when it's shared, and that the best relationships are built between 2 whole people who choose each other every single day." Maya could barely speak through her tears when it was her turn, but she managed to get through the words she'd written and rewritten a dozen times. "Alex, that night when I was sitting on this bench convinced that I was unlovable, you didn't try to convince me I was wrong. Instead, you showed me what love actually looks like through your actions, your consistency, and your belief in my worth even when I couldn't see it myself. You taught me that love isn't about being chosen, despite our flaws. It's about being known completely and treasured anyway. Today, I'm not just promising to love you. I'm promising to be the kind of partner who advocates for your dreams, who shows up in the hard times, who sees the best in you even when you can't see it yourself." When they kissed as husband and wife, Maya felt something settle into place in her chest, a deep sense of rightness and belonging that she'd never experienced before. This wasn't the desperate relief of finally being chosen that she'd felt in previous relationships. It was the quiet joy of 2 people who had found their home in each other. The reception was held in the community center where they volunteered, decorated with simple flowers and filled with laughter, good food, and heartfelt toasts. Maya's father gave a speech about watching his daughter bloom into the confident woman she was meant to be. Alex's best friend from college talked about how happy he was to see Alex open to love again, but the toast that meant the most came from Carmen, the young mother from the literacy center. "Maya and Alex taught me that it's never too late to learn something new, to become someone different, to believe that you deserve good things," Carmen said, raising her glass. They didn't just help me learn to read, they helped me learn to dream. Today we're celebrating not just their love, but the way their love has made all of us believe in ourselves a little more. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Maya and Alex found themselves back at the bench where it all started. They sat in comfortable silence, Maya's head on Alex's shoulder, both of them processing the magnitude of the day. "Do you believe in love now?" Alex asked, echoing the question that had started everything between them. Maya considered the question, seriously. "I believe in this love. I believe in what we've built together. I believe that we'll have hard days and good days and that we'll choose each other through all of them. That's all love really is," Alex said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head, choosing each other over and over again. Maya looked around the park, at the playground where children would play tomorrow, at the paths where joggers would run, at the bench where broken hearts would sit and hopefully find the hope she'd discovered. She thought about the literacy center they'd continue to run together, the students they'd